Hello, everybody. I'm not at home right now, but I'm still gonna do a movie review. Alright, I'm actually doing this late at night, so this apparently tomorrow I'm gonna be releasing this because this is late at night. I might actually make it on the brim of midnight, but either way, today I'm going. First off, I'm Alexander Borden, and we are going to be doing a movie review on Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans. This movie impressed me. It really does. It really does. And I gotta say, I fucking love this movie. One of my favorite Steven Spielberg movies by far. It's so well made that it's just beyond awesome. I watched this movie for the first time on Blu-ray. This is actually the first movie on this channel that I'm doing a movie review on where it's a new movie, because this movie came out in November. It came out at Thanksgiving time in November of 2022, which was last year, not even about 5 months away. So, yeah, 5 months later, 5 or 6 later on, here we are doing The Fabelmans. This movie is amazing in several ways. It captures everything that you can hope for from a movie based upon Steven Spielberg's real life. This movie impressed me, though. I was impressed on how great this film was. And honestly, I gotta talk a lot about this movie, because this movie definitely needs to be seen. Steven Spielberg was shocked that there was barely anybody going to see this in theaters. There's a reason why it's such a great movie. I love this movie in so many ways because of how well made it is. It's fucking amazing. There's so much about this movie that I just love. But enough with me rambling on. Let's get to The Fabelmans. So the movie starts off, which I'm gonna point this out because there's actually people that thought their release was damaged. People that didn't see it in theaters thought the movie was actually broken for this whole thing. During the opening logos, we see the Universal logo. It's a bit faster than usual, and we also see the Amblin logo where it shows E.T. and the moon and everything. We see it overlapping the Universal logo, which shocked everybody. I can't imagine how many people got shocked from that whole ordeal. And either way, I'm actually really impressed that they did this strategy for the new movie and everything. I honestly love this movie though, so I can't say how much I love this movie. Excellent movie, probably one of Steven Spielberg's greatest movies. But let's get on with the storyline. The movie takes place in the I think the mid-50s, and it's based upon Sammy Fabelman, who's going to see his very first movie in theaters, and it's The Greatest Show on Earth. So, this movie, he goes to see this, but before that, we actually get a glimpse at probably some of the best performances in this entire movie. We get Michelle Williams and Paul Dano. He steals the show. So does she. They're the two main characters that steal the show by far. This whole entire movie is impressive. And this opening scene, I just love this opening scene from The Fabelmans. It introduces you to the characters. The characters are actually really interesting to listen to, and honestly, Paul Dano, I mean, I don't remember what his name is, but he understands what is going on. Sammy is terrified. He does not know what to think, because this is his first movie and it's the 50s. So, all he heard about is that the lights are going to be out and you're going to see giant people on a giant screen. But that's when Paul actually gives some great dialogue based upon what a motion picture is, and he pretty much says that it's a bunch of 24 still images that of the same thing at least 24 times. You take a picture of something 24 times, and then there's like 24 frames per second. Pretty much everybody knows how they have that, and everybody knows that there's like this one thing that you most of the times whenever somebody sees a movie, it's always like 60 frames per second, pretty much. So, and that's what I'm pretty sure Avatar and Titanic, when those movies were brought back, they were saying that it was like 60 frames per second. It was like high frame rate kind of thing. That's what they called it, high frame rate. But either way, he gives him the whole story about how motion pictures made, pretty much, and he tells them that there's pretty much nothing to worry about. He goes into the movie. We get to see the movie on what it looks like in their theater, and they're watching the movie. Sammy is like, he's amazed by it because it's on the big screen, and it's the 50s after all. So he sees the movie. The movie shows two robbers. One of them has a girlfriend that's on a train. The other one is like a man, only man for himself kind of person. So what does he do? He says, "Okay, we got what we got. Let's go," and everything. Which, of course, Sammy Fabelman is just amazed by this acting and everything. He knocks the guy out because he wants his girlfriend to be safe. Well, his girlfriend or wife, his love interest, alright? He wants them to be safe. So he goes because there's an incoming train coming at him. So he tries to go towards it and flashing his lights, telling them to stop. In which the car gets hit, crashes, and the train crashes into the other train, knocking the train off the rails. So this entire scene traumatizes Sammy Fabelman, and he immediately gets traumatized from this whole movie. In which the next scene, when they're going home, he's completely silent because he's just shocked at what he just saw, even though it clearly looks fake. Nowadays, something like that, people would say, "Oh man, that looks so fake and everything. That's so 50s." Well, this is the 50s, and people were shocked by it. So this whole thing in the movie got him traumatized. So, and during this whole scene, we actually find out that they're actually a Jewish family, which, of course, the whole movie's revolved around Steven Spielberg, who himself is Jewish. And this whole scene is kind of funny, but also kind of interesting because we actually get to see Sammy, Mitzi, and I can't remember Paul Dano's character, but either way, I think it's Dano. It's something like that. I don't even know how to say his name. Actually, if I think about it, Dano would be spelled with two N's. I think it's Paul Dano. But either way, I'm gonna call him Paul Dano. Hopefully, I didn't get his name wrong. But either way, he's in the movie, right? And he's basically saying, "Hey, we can't find our house because there's so many Christmas lights and everything." And Sammy immediately points out that they're the only house with lights. Clearly shows that they're without lights. So they're the only place without lights. Clearly shows that they're the only Jewish family in that area. So this is the times where people had things against the Jews. This is pretty much after World War II, after Adolf Hitler and everything. People were against Jews because of this whole time. And this whole scene is ironic because, after all, Sammy tells his parents that he wants Christmas lights for Hanukkah and everything, and they're like, "Sorry, we're Jewish, we can't have that," pretty much. So either way, the next scene of the movie shows Sammy trying to go to sleep. He has a nightmare reliving the whole scene from that movie that he just saw. My lips are kind of dry right now. Either way, the whole scene he has the nightmare, and he immediately wakes up in the middle of the night, and he says that he knows what he wants for Hanukkah. It's revealed to be a train later on. He wants a toy train and everything, and it's a pretty interesting scene. We actually get to see some like family bonding. They have their Hanukkah and everything. They're celebrating Hanukkah this whole time. We have a good amount of time where we actually get to see some really pretty great footage of how Jewish families live and everything. We get a good glimpse of how they live and everything. Sammy gets the train. They set it up. He starts to use it. He basically is mesmerized by it, so much to the point where he pretty much rests his head down on the table. And with the train coming at him, he can't handle it. So he gets up in the middle of the night to test out a crashing sequence in which he tries to destroy another toy just to recapture the moment. And he wakes up his parents in the process, and they tell him that he should be more careful and everything. And he tells them that he needs to see the trains crash, which his father is a little weirded out by it. But his mother figures out that the reason why is because of how traumatized he is, and if he actually sees it over and over again, it won't be as scary anymore. So she comes up with the idea to film it and have the recording. He can watch the film over and over again so that it doesn't become scary, just so they don't break the train. So, because trains back then, if you break it, you have to buy another one because you broke it, pretty much. And except the father actually repairs, so that's a good thing. But it's expensive to repair back in the day. That's the reason why people just bought a new one. But either way, this whole scene, though, it's great acting that fills this entire scene, which we have great acting from Michelle Williams and Paul Dano. And this movie's just fucking great. Either way, Steven Spielberg is a fucking genius. I mean, I just recently watched War of the Worlds, so that's another Steven Spielberg I watched recently, and I'm thinking about rewatching the movie Close Encounters. I haven't seen that movie in years, but either way, The Fabelmans clearly shows that Steven Spielberg still got it. He used to make masterpieces, in which I already covered a couple of them on this channel, Jurassic Park and Jaws. So I might in the future do Schindler's List, but that one, oh god, that one would take me forever. Because there's a lot to cover when we're talking about Schindler's List. It's gonna be like a history lesson video. Alright, I'm gonna be teaching history class on this one. Yeah, I'm gonna be the history teacher on YouTube. But either way, I'm pretty much doing a history lesson right here, except it's fictional history mixed with non-fictional. But either way, this entire scene gets Sammy's parents kind of happy because they actually got their son doing something, and it's great seeing his son actually conquering his fears pretty much. And he gets the film and everything. We're also introduced to Benny, who's played by Seth Rogen, in a really scene where you think he's going to be like the funny guy and everything. He's only funny in a couple scenes, and he plays an actual serious role in this movie, and he plays probably one of the best performances in this entire movie. Seth Rogen blows his movies out of the water. This is probably the best movie that Seth Rogen's ever been in. And honestly, I was actually shocked at some of the best lines that Seth Rogen uses. And but either way, we're going to get to that in the future. But of course, right now, Sammy immediately is starting to think about filmmaking, in which he already got a camera from his mother, who she gave it to him to film the train crashing. He uses the camera to film a whole bunch of other stuff, pretty much him and his siblings messing around. So along the process, Paul Dano's character. Paul Dano's character. He decides to invite his friend Benny with them as they move. His wife Mitzi has a problem with it, in which she takes the kids to go see a tornado, in which she's not even thinking in the scene. Pretty much, Mitzi's clearly not thinking. She wanted to take her kids to see the tornado, in which she nearly gets them killed. In a scene where I actually really like how the scene shows them going down the street and the wind's just throwing stuff back and forth, and we get to see like the power lines just exploding onto the car and everything, and we see the tornado and everything. It's so cool, this entire scene where they are going to see the tornado, and man, immediately we hear Mitzi's character for the first time say, "Everything happens for a reason," which she always says this. It's revealed that we never hear her say it again. We only hear her say this once, though, in which they want to do this camping trip. I'm pretty sure it's to Arizona. So they're doing this camping trip, right? Sammy's recording all this footage. Actually, we didn't even make it there yet. I gotta talk about how he makes a movie, pretty much, of them on the road to a new house. He captures footage and everything, and then he captures a kind of like a student film that's pretty much basic and everything. I can't remember what it was, but I know it's not the Western one because that's later on in the movie. But either way, it's just amazing, though. I gotta say, this entire movie has so many great moments in it. I would love to do a top 10 best moments video. If I ever get the chance to on this channel, I'm going to do a top 10 best moments from the Fabelmans. Great movie with such great acting. It's so good. It's one of Steven Spielberg's greatest movies, probably in its top 5. Top 5. Surprisingly, when I made my own list, I put it above Catch Me If You Can. And Catch Me If You Can is in 6th place. And I gotta say, Schindler's List is not even in my top 5. Instead, it's actually in my top 10, though. It's in my top 10 because, after all, there's a real depiction of what World War II looked like. And it's actually pretty insane. Schindler's List is so graphic, it's fucking crazy. But either way, I've heard so many people saying that they watched Schindler's List in high school and everything. I tried to get my history teacher to play it. What happened? They said it goes on forever and everybody would be falling asleep in class. So, I mean, I guess it's a good enough reason. Because, after all, it is 2023. And which I didn't mention in 2021, so yeah. Fuck. Oh, man. That was a couple years ago, and it feels like it's been forever because, after all, COVID. Fuck COVID. It was the worst thing we've had this decade. Either way, this next scene, though, they go to their new house, pretty much. They're settling in, and Sammy is starting to grow up and realize what it's like to be a teenager and everything. He's with his friends, filming their own movies and everything, and they sneak into a showing, at least I think they sneak into a showing, of The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, who stars John Wayne and what's his name? James Stewart. So the movie is actually directed by John Ford, in which we actually get introduced to at the end of the movie, at least played by David Lynch. But of course, is it David Lynch? Pretty sure that's the person who played him. But either way, he's in the end of the movie. Spoiler alert, but that's the director that they talk about at the end. But either way, he goes to see the movie and everything. They're talking about girls because they were riding down the street and Sammy's crush was walking down the street and everything. They're like talking about like this whole thing that happened to Sammy and everything. You know, teenager talk. And he just does not want to hear. He just wants to sit down and watch the Western movie. In which, when he's watching it, he gets the idea to film a Western. In which he films a Western and impresses all the kids at school. So then he goes home. Well, actually, from going home, him and his family are supposed to be going on a vacation. So, pretty much like a camping trip. And so they do so. I'm pretty sure it's Arizona that they go to. They go camping. He's filming everything that's going on pretty much. They're sitting around campfire, messing around. They're pretty much playing games that you play when you go camping and everything. And he's just like filming stuff until one night we catch the characters alone. And it seems like Mitzi is actually depressed to the point where she's drinking. And she drinks so much that she gets so drunk and she goes over and just starts dancing in front of them. So Benny, who's played by Seth Rogen, of course, he asks him, "Why aren't you filming this?" He asks Sammy this, in which Sammy says there's not enough light. Benny gets up, goes over to his car, and turns on the headlights. So then Sammy starts filming it. But Michelle Williams is actually wearing a transparent robe in the scene. You get to see, I guess you can say, you can see partial nudity in it, but this whole entire scene, the daughter comes out and tries to stop them from filming it because you can see her nude a little bit, at least her silhouette under the dress, under the robe. But either way, this whole scene is pretty much her drunk, out of her mind. She's basically all calm and everything. So yeah, and when she smiles, the first person that she looks at, which this is a clear hint immediately, is the first person she looks at is Seth Rogen's Benny. She doesn't look at her husband. So we already know where this movie's heading. We already know where this movie's gonna head into. The territory. I knew right from the very beginning that it was gonna have something to do with an affair. So, this next scene of the movie features apparently right after they go on this camping trip, I'm pretty sure Mitzi's mother dies at this part. And because she's so heartbroken, she's trying to do everything to calm herself, including buying a piano and starting to play again, because she had a love for the piano when she was younger, in which it was just like one thing that she just loved more than anything. So that's the reason why she gets a piano. She tries to calm herself more than anything, because in her mind she finds it a little wrong that she's having an affair with somebody else. And to top it off, it's your freaking husband's best friend, the one that you can always trust on when you're in big trouble or something. So that is pretty fucked up. In which Paul Dano goes over to Sammy one night in a really, really great scene. He goes to him and he tells him that he wants to do something for his mother, and he wants him to make a camping trip movie, to make a film about the camping trip, just to make his mother happy. In which he says, "Sorry, I am gonna be doing this World War II movie and everything, and I can't do that." And then he's just like, "Do it tomorrow. Tomorrow's the day." He's just like, "I want you to do this because your mother is pretty much heartbroken at this moment, and you need to cheer her up because it's from you. She wants this. This is gonna help her a lot. Pretty much this whole scene is just amazing. I can't go through like full dialogue, but this whole entire scene is just amazing acting. In which I gotta say, this movie is so good that it's crazy. I love this movie a lot. But the next scene, before I get to the next scene, it actually has a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, certified fresh too. Fabelmans is worth it. Buy this movie. I mean, I gotta say, this movie's best to own. I gotta say, the release for this movie, I've seen this release a couple times already. Ever since I bought it, I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. Great movie, such a well crafted film. But the next scene, let's get to the next scene of the Fabelmans. So, while Mitzi's sleeping, she's so heartbroken at the moment from her mother's passing. But she wakes up in the middle of the night and she gets a phone call. At least that's what she thinks. She hears her mother's voice and saying that he's coming and to lock up, pretty much. Paul Dano's character immediately is weirded out, and he pretty much tells her just to get back to sleep. There's no problem. You're just having a nightmare. She's pretty much in the morning and everything, still thinking about her nightmare and everything. What happens? One of my favorite moments in the entire movie. Somebody does arrive at their house. Who is it? One of the best Jewish actors in Hollywood. I gotta say, Judd Hirsch steals the performance in this entire 10-minute scene. We only see him for 10 minutes, and he's fucking amazing. He's so awesome in this whole entire scene. He's great. He's a great actor. And this one scene, he does probably some of the best acting in this entire movie. And he actually got nominated for an Academy Award. So he's been nominated. There's a good chance he's going to be in the Oscars. Because honestly, he gave such a great performance. I wouldn't doubt it that he's going to be there. Either way, oh man, he arrives. It's Uncle Boris that he plays, and Michelle Williams' character Mitzi she's scared because it's her mother's brother, it's her uncle, so she doesn't know what he's gonna do because after all, her mother was terrified of her uncle. We don't know yet. But by the first time we meet Uncle Boris, he seems like a pretty awesome dude. He has been to the circus. He's been through times. He's actually been in film before. So he knows about everything. If you want to talk to him about something, he has plenty of experience in every field, pretty much. And he gives some pretty great moments. So, what happens? Mitzi actually begins to like him, in which the next morning she actually says that she likes him. And right before he leaves, he gives a look at Sammy, and he actually does the sign that he did in the previous scene, which I'm also... the reason why I'm going ahead and then going back is because there's a meaning. The reason why he gets in the vehicle and goes like this. So, that whole sign is his whole monologue in the scene where Sammy's in the same room as him, sleeping pretty much. So, because he had to share the room with him. He's pretty much... Okay, in this entire scene, Sammy is pretty much introducing Uncle Boris to his equipment. In which Uncle Boris is like all confused pretty much, and he's understanding it now because he's like pretty much giving a rundown of everything. I don't know why I said that, but either way, he says, "Okay, instead of explaining this and boring me to death, why don't you just show me?" Pretty much, he says something like that, and he's just like, "Oh, is that the World War II movie?" He asks, and he's like, "No, that's just my dad's stupid camping trip film." And he's just like, "Why is it stupid?" And everything. And he's like, "Oh, my father wants me to make it for my mom," pretty much. He immediately tells him, well, she is heartbroken. Her mother just died, and your father wants to do the best thing possible for her because it's from frickin' son. It's from her frickin' son. She's gonna love that. She's gonna love it to the point where she's gonna be amazed that he did all of this. He spent his time and patience making this film in which he actually gets the confidence to do so. But who gives him the confidence? Uncle Boris. In which this whole entire scene, he's talking to Uncle Boris. Uncle Boris tells him, he pretty much points out that his mother's always been a good piano player, and that every single time she's played, it was like an angel playing and everything. And then he tells him that, okay, you love your family, but you also love art, the art of film and everything, the art. And he says, family and art will tear you apart, pretty much. And man, he pretty much gives him a whole pretty much description of what it's like and everything. He grips his face and he grips it hard, in which that's pretty much the reason why they was scared of him, was because he apparently he feels like he can rip your fucking face off. But either way, he tells him, remember how that hurt, and just keep the confidence, pretty much keep the faith that you can actually do this. Keep the faith, and always make your movies to make people feel happy. Give people real art. Make a film that everybody will love, in which he eventually ends up doing. So he in the middle of the night, he makes his film for his mother, the camping trip film. But in the middle of it, he catches footage that he didn't even think he was gonna catch. Mitzi and Benny are having an affair on the camping trip, and he has a whole reel of it. He caught all this footage, and he didn't even know. So he's going over this footage, rewinding it, fast forwarding it, and he's seeing everything, in which he's heartbroken from it. He makes the film for his mother, but when his mother goes over to him and says, hey, pretty much, I love you, thank you for this, it's just beautiful and everything, thank you so much, pretty much, he doesn't say anything to her and just leaves the room. She doesn't know what gotten into him. He made the film for her, but couldn't say you're welcome. He just left. In her eyes, rudely. He just pretty much left the room. But in his head, he's upset because she freaking had an affair with him. And the next scene, when he actually does the Vietnam, well, not the Vietnam, it was a World War II war scene where he's filming the World War II movie. Oh man, he makes it so heartbreaking that it captures everybody's hearts. Everybody is heartbroken from this when they actually watch it in an actual cinema, in which, when he does so, Mitzi is actually in between her husband and Benny. When she's amazed by it, who does she look at? Frickin' Benny. And who is watching them the whole time? Who is not paying attention to the film and just watching them? Sammy. Sammy does not even care about the film right now. He only cares about them. He cares about his family and the struggling relationship. So, he leaves the theater, right? His mother goes to thank him again for the movie and everything. He walks away from her. Seth Rogen's Benny goes over to him and he tries to thank him too, but Sammy walks away from Benny as well. And he immediately goes over to his father and his friends and all the people that worked on the film, and he was congratulated by them, and he actually sat there pretty much with his father and everybody else, just having a great conversation about the film and everything. We barely get to see any of the conversation, but there's still his mother kind of recognizes that he's not paying attention to her, but he just doesn't know why, though. In which, But, I still gotta say, worth buying. Buy it if you get the chance, because it's an excellent movie. But the next scene, is it the scene that I'm thinking about? Is it one of the biggest scenes? Yeah. Okay. So, the next scene of the movie, I'm pretty sure, is at breakfast the next morning. He's trying to come up with a new movie, pretty much. And he's asking his siblings, and his siblings are pretty much joking around about it. His mother makes a joke. He immediately gets mad at her and starts yelling at her, in which his sister defends his mother, in which his mother talks, pretty much argues back with him, and eventually yells at him at like the max volume, and then he walks away from her, and she smacks him on the back as hard as possible. She's devastated from doing this. She did not want to do this, and when she did it, she didn't even know what to do. She didn't even know what the fuck she just did. She was devastated from her decision. She felt like it was the worst decision possible, and she regrets it for like at least 20 years into the future. Well, at least not that far, but she still regrets it in the future. That she still remembers it because she feels like she wasn't forgiven for it, the whole thing. But after he goes back into the room and he goes to look at his back, he goes to put on a shirt, but before he can get the shirt on, Mitzi comes into the room and looks at his back. He notices that she's all devastated from it, but he still is mad at her, though. She wants an explanation, though. This is finally her time to understand why he's mad at her. He grabs the film reel out of the drawer of the affair, and he puts her in the closet with the film reel. He lets her watch it alone. She comes out of the closet after watching the film on the projector. She unplugs the projector, but she's devastated by her own actions. So, what does Sammy do? He goes to the store and pretty much sells his camera. At the same time, Benny is buying him a camera. So, but he does not want to accept the gift when Benny offers it to him. But one of my favorite lines is delivered by Seth Rogen in this entire movie. This scene, he chases him out of the store pretty much, and Benny starts talking to Sammy, and he tells him that you stop making movies, you're gonna break your mother's heart. And in which he gets him to take the film, well, the camera pretty much, and he gives him $37, I think. Seth Rogen slips it back into his pocket and pretty much makes him keep the camera. So Seth Rogen's still a good guy. He's the one that Mitzi's having an affair with, but he's still a good person. He's a good-hearted person that cares mainly about Mitzi. And it's actually interesting that we do see Paul Dano's character actually caring a lot for Mitzi. But they're always moving because he always gets a new location. He gets a better job in a different location. And all he cares about is his job. That's what breaks them up. In that she only cares about Benny at this point, and he only cares about his job. That's his job and pretty much everybody around him, but he mostly cares about his job. So they decide to travel to a new location, of course, and this is where the whole, pretty much the climatic part of the movie, this is the big part. This is where they spend most of the time in this entire movie in. Alright? this entire half of the movie is very important. So what do they do? They actually they move to this location. We see them moving into their new house pretty much. Paul Dano's character looks happy as hell, but we do see Mitzi looking depressed the whole time. Even on the footage where she might look happy and everything, we still see a bit of sadness in her. And in which this whole half is really important because they're in an area that has a thing against Jews. So we already know that we're in the deep shit right now, alright? And the family's already struggling. He's pretty much giving up on film. Sammy's completely just... He's done with film right at the moment. And what does he do? He decides to pretty much just go on with his life. His sisters have a problem with him at the moment too, specifically Sammy, in which when they go to school for the first time, during I think volleyball, Sammy's competing with the other kids, and he accidentally bumps into one of the bullies. I know the other one, I'm pretty sure is Chad, but I don't remember. Oh yeah, Logan. Okay, Logan is the one that he bumps into, in which his friend Chad immediately goes after him and tries to attack him. But Logan is a lot less lethal. Instead, he just pretty much says, "That hurt." Like, that fucking hurt, right? So you better watch it back, pretty much. He gives him the whole warning, pretty much, and that whole scene is actually really good. He tells him pretty much get the ball. He pretty much bosses him around, tells him what to do in this one scene. He tells him to get the ball. Sammy is afraid of him because he does not want to get bullied. Alright? He's a typical high school student at this moment. And he goes over to get the ball, he accidentally kicks it, and everybody laughs at him. So, he's pretty much getting humiliated first day. He goes into the locker room, and Chad immediately goes over to him and pretty much threatens him. But he also does a huge racist moment featuring what happened back in the day on how everybody hated Jews. Well, it's not racism. They're pretty much, what do they call it? It's the S word. I know the word starts with an S. I forgot what the word is. Either way, they're just really rude people that have a thing against Jews. They're even using the K word. I'm not gonna say it because I don't like using slurs and stuff like that, stuff that people may find offensive, and plus YouTube would hate me for saying that on YouTube, especially. So, but either way, after this whole scene, Chad threatens him in this scene. Logan scares him, in which the whole next scene, which of course, the reason, how did Chad threaten him, perhaps? He threatened him by saying that he was going to slam his teeth into the bubblers. I'm pretty sure he said when he was getting a drink, he would slam his head onto the bubbler. He goes over to the bubbler the next, in a couple hours, pretty much, and he tries to grab a drink, but he's too scared to. In which he goes into the school, and pretty much goes about his business. He goes down the staircase. He stops halfway down the staircase because he finds Logan making out with a redhead girl. He tries to get away, but he drops something, in which this is kind of a moment that you're pretty much on edge right here, because Logan hears it, of course, because it's loud as fuck, and it was a book. It was probably a history book or something, because history books are huge. But he dropped it and got Logan's attention, and he went over to see who it was. But the good part is Sammy gets away quickly, though. So he leaves the school building. He goes down one of the alleyways, pretty much. Chad comes out of the building. He turns around and goes another direction. And Logan comes out of that direction with a completely different girl. And that's really important to notice. And in which I'm going to explain why after. But either way, Logan and Chad pretty much corner Sammy. And they say to him pretty much, oh, like, what are you doing, pretty much? And they start harassing him. They call him a nickname. They call him Bagelman. And in which, because he's a Jew and everything, and bagels are pretty much what Jews call kosher, which is pretty much you're able to eat it. If it's kosher, you can eat it. Pretty much. If it's not kosher, you can't eat it. It's not blessed. So, in which, what do they do? He immediately, I'm pretty sure they tell, okay, let me think. It was Logan and Chad, pretty much, they were talking shit, and his girl, Logan's girlfriend at the time, tells them to stop. And in which he pretty much, they tell him to apologize to her, and for like the dumbest reasons, one of them being something completely offensive and something being really stupid, because they tell him to apologize for staring at her for too long. Pretty much say, hey, he has the hots for her, he can't even talk to her, haha, apologize for staring at her, pretty much. And then he's just like, oh, okay, if you won't apologize for that, apologize for killing Jesus. So, we already can tell that these people are just fucking assholes, pretty much, at this moment, and he pretty much gives Logan a run for his money by going over to his girlfriend and saying, oh, he was making out with some redhead on the staircase earlier and everything. She tells him, hey, I thought you guys broke up. You told me she broke up. I'm breaking up with you. So, Logan, devastated by that, he goes over to Sammy and punches him as hard as possible in a really graphic scene, in which there is blood in the scene, and it's actually pretty fucking graphic. He goes over to him and threatens him that if he doesn't tell her that he lied, then he's gonna get frickin' hurt badly. He's gonna get hurt worse than anything ever. So, pretty much. So he goes home, in which his mother is completely angry about it. She's devastated. She's fucking mad as fuck. She will literally murder somebody. She has that feeling and everything. So, Sammy is pretty much, he hates it there just because of what he experienced on his first day. On his first day, he gets freaking punched in the fucking face. That's pretty fucking messed up. So, what does he do? He pretty much tells them a lot by saying to them that the only reason why we're here is because Dad got a new place to go and everything, and he pretty much ran away and took us all with him. Pretty much that's what the whole thing was, in which Paul Dano immediately gets up and starts yelling at Sammy, pretty much, and in which Mitzi's trying to calm the whole conversation, pretty much, because things are heating up, in which Sammy's getting mad at Paul Dano. He's pretty much getting mad at his father, and his father's getting mad at Sammy. So, right before things heat up fully, Mitzi immediately interrupts everything and says, hey, I got therapy and everything. And the next day, he goes to school. He apologizes to them about lying. One thing, though, there's actually two girls this time. Instead of just her girlfriend, it's also another girl who's the girlfriend's best friend. So, the girlfriend's best friend is intrigued that he doesn't know how to live. Well, he knows how to live without Jesus, pretty much, and she wants to get Jesus into his life. She pretty much wants to convert him pretty much Catholic or Christian. So I don't know the difference, to be honest. All I know, I'm actually kind of religious. I believe in Jesus pretty much, but this whole entire scene, uh, the girlfriend's still trying to figure out how he knew that the ex was a redhead, because he did say that he lied, but he also said a redhead, specifically a redhead, in which what does that say? What does that say? What does that say? She knows. She knows he wasn't lying. And that pretty much, we don't see it on screen, but she knows that Logan threatened him. And she knows that was the only way out, was to lie back to her. Pretty much to lie to her the next morning. Logan threatened him that if he didn't lie to her, he was gonna beat him up, pretty much. So he goes back home, but he goes to the girlfriend's best friend's house, in which they do this really weird scene involving them talking about how she thinks Jesus is hot and everything. And she gives a whole explanation that he could have came in any form, and specifically he came as a young man. So then they give this whole thing where he wants to let Jesus into his body, pretty much. Like, he wants to do all that. And what does he do? He actually gets creeped out from the whole thing, because she does like this weird scene, but she also does make out with him. And once or twice. So yeah. And he even brings her to his house, introduces her to his parents and everything. And as soon as he does, it's a huge mistake. Oh yeah. They also got a monkey. It's not really important, but they got a monkey, and it was just to pretty much make Mitzi cheer up. So either way, the whole scene where he brings her home, well, her to his house, into his home, all they do is talk about Sammy. That's all that happens, in which Sammy is literally kind of embarrassed, but he's also really angry that nobody's like talking about anybody. Mitzi won't even talk about how she grew up with anything. She won't tell anything else, but besides pretty much, okay, let's worry about Sammy, even though he's doing pretty good right now. Let's still worry about him though. So what happens, pretty much? Sammy and his girlfriend, well, his now girlfriend, leave, in which they decide to do this whole thing, which is the ditch day, I think it's called. They say, hey, there's a new event coming up, and they still don't have a cameraman, everything, because you're good with a camera. Why don't you film ditch day? So what does he do? He actually films ditch day, in which he catches all of like this really good footage and everything, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So next moment, he goes to the prom, in which he brings his now girlfriend. He gives her a gold crucifix, which she wears around her neck, and she goes into the prom with him. They pretty much dance for like a couple minutes, and then they decide to put on the Ditch Day movie. What's gonna happen? This is the biggest moment of the movie, pretty much. And this is probably my favorite moment from this entire movie. This is probably the best moment from this entire movie. He puts on the Ditch Day footage, and we see everything. And we see Chad and Logan. We see both of them. Chad is shown as a rejected, lonely person. He gets rejected when he asks a girl out. Then he's shown walking lonely on the beach and everything. We get that footage of him. We also get a lot of fun footage of everybody else. specifically, we get footage of Logan looking like a fucking superhero, pretty much. He was amazing compared to everybody else. He beat everybody in the race, pretty much. There was a huge race, and he was the one that beat everybody, and he was pretty much adored by it. This entire scene, Logan's watching the whole thing. He does not know what to say. He goes to find Sammy, who fled from the whole thing after the movie ended. He pretty much took off, and Logan goes to find him, pretty much. And he tells him, why did you do that? Like, why did you make me look like that? You made me look like I'm a person that I really am not. He made him look like a positive figure that you can always rely on, pretty much. And he wasn't really that. He was just a cool kid, right? He was just a jock, pretty much. And he was shocked from that whole thing. He actually felt like he could actually like him. But the thing is, though, he was holding himself against him. And in which, what does he do? He pretty much has a whole argument with him, and Sammy gets back at him by calling him an idiot, pretty much. And ever since he first arrived there, he's been pretty much tortured by him, and he's never treated him good. At least at one time in his life, he's never treated him good so far. So he's pretty much screwed up his whole school career just because he freaking scared the living shit out of him. And he told him that it's really shocking, this whole scene, that he did not get mad at him. In which, right after we see Sammy breaking down and crying, immediately, right after this whole conversation, Logan breaks down and starts crying. But who busts through the hallway? Pissed off out of his mind, Chad comes busting through the hallway doors, in which are shut for the prom. What does he fucking do? He tries to make a swing at him. He tries to do a swing at him. Logan gets up, grabs Chad, and throws him onto the ground. Chad is surprised by this whole scene. And he immediately says to Logan that, you are an idiot. You actually believe this whole thing and everything. And immediately, Logan grabbed him and pretty much, he scared him pretty much to the point where he just ran. So Chad ran off like a coward, and he pretty much got rid of his only friend that is a literal douchebag. So Logan is no more, his friend's no more with Chad, who is the worst person to hang out with. He's a bad influence on him, and he finally got rid of him. So Logan is impressed. He goes over to Sammy, offers to smoke marijuana with him. Sammy turns it down, and Logan immediately leaves and says, life's not nothing like the movies. Pretty much. Life's nothing like the movies, Fabelman, he says. And in which he leaves, they flip each other off, which is their way of saying, oh, goodbye, asshole. That kind of thing. And in which the next scene, which during the prom, he actually told his girlfriend, which the reason why they split up, was because he was just like, oh, you want to go to California with me? If you don't, my parents are going to get divorced. In which she's all confused why he just wants her in California because his parents are getting divorced. And that he knows he's going to be leaving sometime soon, and he wanted her to come with him. But she wants to go to college. She wants a college degree. And he just wants to get into the movies, pretty much. So she leaves him, and yeah, they show the whole Ditch Day thing. Logan's amazed. Chad got humiliated and he lost his big protector, pretty much. So Chad is now vulnerable to everybody. Anybody can beat the shit out of him. So this next scene shows Sammy comes home, sees Mitzi, and Mitzi talks to him. She brings up the whole thing where she slapped him on the back. She brings it up. She feels like she's never been forgiven for that whole thing. He keeps trying to tell her that he forgives her. She doesn't believe it until he actually hugs her and says that he forgives her. She is still traumatized that she even did such a thing to him. So they start to have a conversation in the kitchen, pretty much like mother and son talking, in which the next scene that comes into play, if I'm not mistaken, well, actually, earlier in the movie, we are actually, before they get to the ditch day footage, like, he's working on the ditch day stuff, pretty much, but before that, Mitzi and her husband, well, and the father, both say that they're getting divorced. The whole family's heartbroken from the whole thing, and it's revealed later on that after this whole thing, Mitzi gets to have her final conversation with him, pretty much, and Sammy moves to Los Angeles, California. He finally gets the dream where he goes to California. But ever since he freaking sent out so many letters, it's crazy, but he's never gotten a response back. So he's all scared that he's never going to get a response. He's never going to get accepted as an actor. Which, that's what this whole scene, it's so good. Because it has a lot to do with Steven Spielberg. This is all inspired by Steven Spielberg. This is pretty much his fright of becoming a freaking director. When Spielberg first started out, he was scared before he even got accepted. He was scared that he wouldn't even get accepted. That's what this whole scene captures. It's the amazement that he gets. Well, it's the amazement we get, and it's the anguish and despair that he has, that he's not going to ever accomplish anything. He feels like his life is going nowhere because he won't get accepted. In which they grab the mail, pretty much. The mail pretty much he was going through it. He finds a letter from Mitzi, in which is a whole bunch of photos from it, from a party. The main highlight in the photos is the kids, pretty much. Okay, the kids are doing good. Here's some pictures of them and everything. But the father still is devastated about his wife divorcing him. In which he actually does see, in the corner of the photo, he does see his wife, Mitzi, with Benny. And they're both happy. But he's heartbroken still from the whole divorce, in which he immediately tells him that it's alright. And we also get introduced, which one thing before I actually go to the next scene, we actually do hear from, we actually witness Sammy having a panic attack because he's not getting accepted. That was how the scenes first started out. Apparently, his father revealed that it was hereditary, that he had a panic attack because his mother had him. So he pretty much gives him tea. This whole scene is revolved around him losing his mother and the father losing his wife. So this whole scene is pretty much them in despair, pretty much. His father is very heartbroken. He sees all the photos. He's too sad to even talk until he goes over and he pretty much, while he's talking to him, he's like, okay, well, you're gonna get somewhere. I know it. You're a great person. You make great films and everything. But he also does say this. He forgot to check one thing in the mail. And it's from fucking CBS. He goes into the CBS studios, and they announce that they want him for the show Hogan's Heroes. So, what does he do? He fucking accepts it. They're like, okay, well, you want to see the greatest director of all time? Yes, I already announced it before. There was John Ford that they showed, in which he was the director of all the John Wayne stuff. So, he meets John Ford, puffing his cigar in his office, pretty much, and he actually gives a pretty funny scene for like the last 5 minutes. It's actually really funny seeing John Ford. He comes into the office with like with like kisses all over his face, pretty much all the lipstick all over his face. His secretary goes into his room, cleans off his face pretty much, tells him go in there, tells Sammy to go into his office. He goes into his office. John Ford lights up his cigar. He burns the match halfway down, and he starts smoking. And he's like, "Okay, so you want to be a picture maker, pretty much?" And he's like, "Why? This business will tear you apart." That's pretty much what he says and everything to him and everything. And he tells him a very important moment in which this part actually I laughed in hysterics to this part because this part's pretty funny. He actually does tell him, he's like, go over to that painting over there. You see that painting? The horizon's at the bottom of the photo. Those two men on the horseback are not the key detail. The horizon's at the bottom of the photo. He's like, okay, now go over to this one. You see the horizon's at the top. And then he's just like, okay, so the horizon, if the horizon is at the bottom, it's good. If it's at the top, it's good. If it's at the middle, it's boring as shit, he says. In which he says, okay, now get the fuck out of my office. Which is the only F-bomb used in the entire movie. He leaves the building. He feels amazed and everything that he actually got accepted. In which we actually get a really funny end scene where we actually get to see him walk into the studios and everything. We see the horizon at the top of the photo, well, at the top of the screen and everything, and it shifts the screen up so it's in the middle of the screen, and you see how boring it fucking looks. We don't even see any, like, great framing. It just looks like some idiot's holding the camera. So we get to see what he's talking about, pretty much. And the movie's done. So, as I was saying, this movie's excellent. I love this movie. I mean, it's actually 2 hours and 30 minutes long. I described it in 1 hour and 7 minutes. So, yeah, pretty much. This movie, I actually really adored this film when I watched it. I found this movie to be one of the best Steven Spielberg movies ever made. I gotta say, it fucking amazed me. I was shocked from how good this movie was. But after all, it's Steven Spielberg. I mean, I shouldn't have been shocked. I mean, he's a fucking masterpiece maker. Which a lot of people say that Alfred Hitchcock was the greatest filmmaker of all time. People say that Stanley Kubrick was. People say that freaking Francis Ford Coppola is. Martin Scorsese. We had Mean Streets, we had Raging Bull, we had Goodfellas, we had that kind of stuff. We had Taxi Driver. All that from Martin Scorsese, pretty much. But Steven Spielberg, I feel as if he's the one that wins the title for the best director of all time. It's just his movies are so fucking good. There's no bad movies from him whatsoever. I love it. I love this movie. Great movie. The Fabelmans, 5-star movie. I love it. It's amazing in every way. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching. I know I haven't done any movie reviews lately. I mean, last week I didn't do a movie review because I forgot. I was going to do Lord of the Rings Return of the King, but I chose not to because after all, that video would go on forever and I haven't seen that movie in a while, so. And the last time I tried to do a Lord of the Rings movie, I was fucking clueless the whole time. And I did have a warning at the beginning that I was clueless the entire time, pretty much. So, this time, though, I was not clueless because I saw this movie a couple times ever since I first got this movie. I immediately was just like, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to do a movie review on The Fabelmans because of how great of a movie it is. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, subscribe, ring the bell to get notified for another fucking movie review. Thank you. Have a good night.